I want you to put a star by this problem because a lot of students will struggle with this one, next quiz, next test, something like this. Basically what this turns into is order of operations. It's combining the trig that we've been doing with algebra stuff and PEMDAS, basically. Okay? You've got 3 different problems that you're going to need to solve. Cosine 120 is one of them. All right? So let's look at cosine 120. Cosine 120, let's do it here. 120 puts us into the second quadrant. Okay? 120 has what reference? 60. Okay, right? So it's kind of like cosine 60. Cosine 60 from the chart is 1/2. But then you think about what is cosine? Is cosine plus or minus in that second quadrant? Minus. Cosine goes with x. We know x numbers are negative. Okay? So we have cosine 120 is equal to negative 1/2 right there. Okay? Cosine 120 is equal to negative 1/2. Now, what people get confused about right here is what this says is 2 times sine 60 degrees squared. Okay? When it says sine squared 60 degrees, it means the same thing as sine 60 degrees squared, or sine 60 degrees times itself. That's what that notation means. And so sine 60, that's just in the chart, right? Sine 60 is square root of 3 over 2. So we don't even have to draw a picture of that. But what we're going to have to do is square that and multiply it by 2. There's your PEMDAS. There's your order of operations. So we have negative 1/2 plus 2 times the square root of 3 over 2 squared. Okay? Minus tangent squared 30 means minus tangent 30 degrees squared. That's what that means, tangent squared. Okay? And again, 30 is right out of the chart. So you do have to remember to do sine over cosine. And when I do tangent 30, notice the 2's cancel out of my chart. I'm going to get 1 over the square root of 3. Now normally I would rationalize that, but here I see that when I square it, the square root's going to go away anyway. So you could rationalize that one, but I don't need to because of what's going to happen with the square. Okay, so if you can do those 3 trig problems, now you're set up for algebra and order of operations. So, what happens when I square a square root is it's going to go away. Okay, we've got 3/4 here basically. Square root of 3 squared is 3, and 2 squared is 4. And so we have negative 1/2 plus 2 times 3/4 minus, and then here 1 squared is 1, and square root of 3 squared is 3. So we've got some fractions going on. All right, 2 cancels, so that's 3/2. Put those 2 things together. Negative 1/2 plus 3/2 is 2/2, or 1. So we're looking at 1 minus 1/3. Okay, all this is 1. All that's 2/2, so that's 1. 1 minus 1/3. 2/3. 2/3 is okay. I think the algebra, the order of operations there is tougher than the trig, and that's what people really get stuck on in that problem. Okay? Example x4 is a little bit easier. Evaluate cosine 780. Well, 780, I want to find that least positive coterminal. So let's subtract 360 a couple of times. We're going to end up getting 60. Okay, so 780 doesn't equal 60, but they put themselves in the same place. They end up or terminate in that same exact quadrant. Okay, so think about your 60 degrees, or if you want to, you go around once, twice, and then all that is 780, but they're in the same place. And so cosine 780 looks like cosine 60. Okay. Now remember, when we talk about the reference angle, we're not really talking about the sine. You always have to do that second part. So what about cosine in the first quadrant? Isn't it still positive? So cosine 780 does equal cosine 60. You look at the chart, cosine 60 is 1/2. And there's your answer. Okay? example x5, we want to evaluate tangent negative 405. Okay? Tangent negative 405. So I like to make the least positive coterminal. That's what I like to do. That's not the only way of doing it. You could draw this negative angle if you want. I'd rather change it to its least positive coterminal. We're going to have to add 360 a couple of times in order to get that smallest positive number. 315, thank you very much. So tangent negative 405 degrees equals tangent 315. Okay, they're in the same location. So 315, here's 270, and here's 360. Seems like we've already drawn 315 once today, I think. The 315 puts us into that fourth quadrant. Okay? You remember what the reference angle is on a 315? 45. Okay? So when we consider the reference angle, we're looking at tangent 45 degrees, but also don't forget about the sine of it. Okay? What do we know about tangent in the fourth quadrant? Tangent is negative. Only cosine and secant are positive in the fourth quadrant. So we know tangent is negative there. So we do negative tangent 45. Tangent 45 is 1. We're looking at negative 1. And there's our answer. Tangent negative 405 degrees equals negative. Oops.